Good morning, everyone. It's wonderful to see you all and wonderful to practice together. I am pleased to introduce our very own Taishin for our Dharma talk today. Please give your full attention.
Thank you, uh, Oshin, and thank you everyone for being here. Um, I'm really happy this morning, and some of that comes from a lot of gratitude I have for this space that we share together on Saturdays and throughout the week. Um, as some of you know, um, it's been a lot of change in this one's life recently. Um, my partner, Michelle, now wife, we got married um, 6, 7 weeks ago, moved across the country from Wisconsin to California, started new jobs. We're living at Jikoji, one of our sister temples in the Phoenix Cloud lineage. It's just a lot of new. And it helps this one in this time of transition to be able to show up here to familiar faces, friendly faces. Um, so I'm really just happy to be here and grateful for the opportunity to share um, a little bit of what's happening with me, with you, such as it is. So thank you. And before I go any further, I'll offer a brief physical description of myself, just in case you've forgotten. I'm a white man in his late 30s, bald, mostly clean shaven, I suppose. I've got clear rimmed glasses on. My face and ears have many piercings, and my earlobes are gauged to an inch and a half. And that's as big as they're going to get, I promise. Um, I'm wearing a white juban, it's an undershirt of sorts. On top of that is a light blue kimono. On top of that is a black koromo. And on top of that is a black okesa. And it's okay today because it's cool up here in the mountains. So not too warm. 2 months ago, I offered a talk on the Heart Sutra. That talk was inspired by Kobun Chino's commentary on the same. And I spoke about emptiness that morning, both itself and as a way to shed a little bit of light on this language of mirrors that shows up in many Buddhist texts and religious writings generally. Um, Religious texts, Kobun says, are mirrors. They reflect us back to ourselves, how we are, something about our present condition. So to study the Heart Sutra, it would seem to follow, is to study yourself. And I wondered why this was the case. I got curious. Um, and I offered, one perspective on that topic a couple months ago. All things are marked by emptiness, the Heart Sutra says. And another way of saying the same thing is all things are intimately interconnected. So when two things arise together, the idea is that arising happens when and through these two things coming to be and blending and mixing with one another. Each becomes part of the other, influencing how it comes to be, and at the same time reflecting it back to itself, once more revealing something about itself to that thing, kind of like a mirror. Because I'm intimately connected with all things, wherever I go, I meet myself. Wherever I go, there I am. These are ways of expressing the intimate relationship that I have with all things and the intimate relationship that all things have with me. So this intimacy is mutual, it seems to me. And today I want to continue in this direction and I want to talk about sincerity. Um, for the last maybe 6 months or 9 months, I've been using this word a lot. I didn't plan to, and it was only maybe 3 or 4 months in that I started to notice I'm saying sincere a lot and talking about sincerity a lot. So just last month here at Jikoji, we had our Nehane session. This is an extended meditation retreat during which we commemorate Shakyamuni Buddha's parinirvana. And that's a fancy way of saying Shakyamuni Buddha's passing away, his death. And this particular Buddha we sometimes refer to as our Buddha, the historical Buddha, the one that's part of our universe. There are many Buddhas apparently in Buddhist cosmology, and they live here, there, and everywhere, but Shakyamuni's ours. He passed away 2,600 years ago, so various ways of marking that. And that's something that we did last month. And during that retreat, I said more than once that I had a lot of gratitude and appreciation for all of the sincere practitioners who showed up. And at other times during that week, I was in awe of the sincere practice I was witnessing, whether that was sitting zazen or helping out in the kitchen or weeding or moving rocks during work periods, or the way in which people listened and shared during discussions we would have in the afternoon, and just generally created and cared for a safe space. Um, you could say I'm on a bit of a sincerity kick. And so I got curious. What feelings or perceptions am I attempting to bring together and highlight when I label something sincere? How am I judging a person, whether their presence or their actions or their speech, such that sincerity is the word that I'm reaching for, grabbing a hold of? What are the characteristics of sincere practitioners who embody a sincere practice? These are the questions I'm kicking around right now, and here's what I came up with. So Kobun Chino, in his introductory talk to the Heart Sutra, says the following: consciously or unconsciously, the action of reading a sutra contains the courageous mind to face to yourself. When you pick up the sutra, already there is a strong inner need to see yourself. It doesn't have the sense of seeking enjoyment, though perhaps there's enjoyment in some sense there. A sincere interest in your own reality and a clear eye to seeing your world is necessary. You think, if I have made a mistake, I won't ignore it. Or if I see goodness, I can say, I am good. And less important here is Kobin's use of the word sincere, and more important is all the other words that he uses. When I read this passage, I get the feeling that he's reaching for something too. He's kind of groping around in the same way that I am. So you think, if I have made a mistake, I won't ignore it. Or if I see goodness, I can say, I am good. And I wonder how many of us do both of these things and do them without discomfort or without hesitation. Not me. Um, so the first part of this, if I've made a mistake, I won't ignore it. I do this really well. Um, Maybe I do this too well. The voice of what we sometimes call the inner critic, it has many other names too, is alive, attentive within this body, heart, mind, and it's supported by what you might call perfectionist leanings and this since childhood desire to be a good boy. I'm going to be the good one out there. I must do this, whatever it is, correctly. And if I don't, and I see that, or I don't, but somebody else points it out to me, not only will I not ignore it, but it won't happen again. It's almost this ridiculous reaction I have. I respond to the mistakes I make by like making a vow. Um, so sometimes during Zen retreats, we have our meals in a ceremonial style called orioki. And those of you who have any familiarity with this know that there's like a lot of moving parts, and it can be really easy to make a mistake. And in most places where we practice, it's like, okay, we're all doing our best, but some places are like really firm. Um, so I remember being somewhere and practicing, and as you're laying out the bowls and the utensils, you put the chopsticks on the middle of the three bowls, and you should do this carefully. And chopsticks are usually kind of round so they can roll easily. And I don't remember, I probably wasn't super careful or paying attention. But as I was putting them out, they rolled off the bowl and smacked onto the table. And somebody else looked over at me like, "Oh, I'm sorry." Um, and inside, right, my reaction, and I think that's the appropriate word here, was never again will my chopsticks roll off the middle bowl during orioki. It's this kind of grand pronouncement to myself. Um, it's like ridiculous. If you're not laughing, please laugh with me. Um, but being a sincere practitioner, having a sincere interest in my own reality requires more than noticing and attending to my mistakes independent of whether there's an accompanying vow, right? Again, Coben says, if I see goodness, I can say to myself, I am good. And seeing and accepting something positive about myself is really difficult for me. Um, Usually I deflect, or if I'm not quick enough to come up with a witty deflection, I'll try to minimize what somebody's complimenting about me, or search with fervor for like an unnoticed flaw. Oh, well, you thought it was good, but did you notice this thing? Um, Much of this behavior is automatic or unreflective. I don't like think consciously about doing it. It just happens. Um, and I'm currently afforded an opportunity to practice with it. So out here, there's a gentle practice opportunity happening. It's called 52 weeks. And we're using a recent Dharma teacher's book on mindfulness. And so every week, I have a new mindfulness exercise that I can use to explore my everyday life and this or that thing that's a part of it that I might not be paying a whole lot of attention to. And then I get to share my experiences on a message board. Um, it's a year-long practice opportunity, and all of you could join if you're interested. And week 6, which was in February of this year, was called True Compliments. And part of the instruction offered by this Dharma teacher reads, become aware also for any compliments other people give you. Investigate the purpose of compliments and the effect on you being given a compliment. And after noting that some people, like this person, are hesitant to receive compliments, the author continues, being given a compliment creates vulnerability. And I thought, yeah, and there's more. Receiving a compliment requires vulnerability. Specifically, I'm required to open up to how somebody other than myself sees me, how my presence, speech, and deeds either affect them or somebody else or something else. And finally, how all of this influences our many relationships. And that's a lot. And it can be offered in just 3 or 4 words. So I thought about saying, I love you to someone. That's a kind of compliment. It expresses a feeling that you have, maybe a judgment about this person, and probably some sort of value is mixed in there too. And so I invite you to consider, I'm still sitting with these questions. Um, how does it feel when someone says, I love you, and you're ready to receive that? And how does it feel when somebody says, I love you, and you're not ready to receive that? You can't be vulnerable to say, oh, you see me in that way. Maybe you can, and there's celebration. Maybe you can't, and you go, uh-oh, I need to leave the room. Um, there are the stories I tell about myself, with which I'm familiar and I'm comfortable. And there are the stories that other people tell about me both long and short, most of which I do not and I will probably never experience. But to be open to any of them, to receive any of them, requires that I create space along the narrow conception of myself, this cozy construction in which I hide, and expose myself to connection with all things. So, in addition to vulnerability, there must needs be courage, it seems to me. And so, part of what I think I'm reaching for when I describe somebody as sincere is vulnerability. There's a willingness to be exposed, unguarded, and bare, and meet the whole of your life, however it is. This person, all of you here, by the way, shows up ready to meet the whole of themselves. So again, if I have made a mistake, I won't ignore it. Or if I see goodness, I can say to myself, I am good. And since it's not all about good and bad or right and wrong, lest you feel boxed in by these ever-present dichotomies, I thought I would offer a poem at this point to encourage a bit of a pivot. So this is a poem from W.H. Auden. It was Easter as I walked in the public gardens, hearing the frogs exhaling from the pond, watching traffic of magnificent cloud moving without anxiety on open sky. Season when lovers and writers find an alterning speech for altering things, an emphasis on new names, on the arm a fresh hand with fresh power. But thinking so, I came at once where solitary man kept sat weeping on a bench, hanging his head down, his mouth distorted, helpless and ugly as an embryo chicken. So I remember all those whose death is necessary condition of the season's setting forth, who sorry in this time look only back to Christmas intimacy, a winter dialogue fading in silence, leaving them in tears. And recent particulars come to mind. The death by cancer of a once hated master, a friend's analysis of his own failure, listened to at intervals throughout the winter at different hours and in different rooms, but always with success of others for comparison. The happiness, for instance, of my friend Kurt Groot, absence of fear in Gerhard Meyer from the sea, the truly strong man. A bus ran home then on the public ground, lay fallen bicycles like huddled corpses. No chattering valves of laughter emphasized, nor the swept gown ends of a gesture stirred. The Cecile hush, until a shower fell willing into grass and closed the day, making choice seem a necessary error. I really like this poem and selected it because, as best I understand it, this is all what's happening throughout the speaker's mind as they're walking in the public gardens on Easter morning. And then in that last bit, it sounds like this is what's happening when they're heading home. And this has been their whole life since Easter till now. And they seem to have been showing up for so much of it. Something to aspire to, perhaps. So a moment ago, I said, in addition to vulnerability, this one part of sincerity, it seems to me, there must needs be courage. And Kobun says much the same in this little passage that I'm focusing on today. Consciously or unconsciously, he says, the action of reading a sutra contains the courageous mind to face to yourself. When you pick up the sutra, there is already a strong inner need to see yourself. Yet courage is said in many ways, and its causes and conditions vary. So I wonder, what is this strong inner need to see yourself that he's talking about? And I was able to make some progress when I started thinking that really Kobun here is talking about the whole of Zen practice, sitting, walking, studying, being of service, being in community with others. He's not just talking about reading a sutra. So we had a Zazen Kai here last Saturday. That's a 1 day meditation retreat. And there were about 25 participants. We lost a few during the lunch break. I assume they had other commitments, and I wish them well. And for most of them, I noticed it was their first time coming here to the temple. They'd never been for like gardening or another program or even Sunday service. It's their first time coming here was for this 1 day retreat. And I assume, though I have no evidence to support this, that for many of them, it was their first time sitting silently and facing the wall for probably about 5 hours. And maybe most important, it was clear skies, sunny, and warm on that Saturday. And Koun Misha Sensei, one of the teachers here, and who led the retreat, remarked in her talk, you could have been literally anywhere else today. So why are you here? And not like in a, this is a waste of your time, but it's not like it's cold, wet, or rainy and you don't want to go outside, or like many of my friends now back in Wisconsin, they just got hit with a blizzard, so you're stuck inside. Like you could have gone to the beach. And yet you came here to a temple you've never been to, probably to sit in meditation for longer than you've ever done. Like, why? Um, and I wondered the same. Like, what called these people here to do this? And to pay money to do this. Like, you could have done this at home. You have walls there. You could sit and face them. Um, whatever the reason, whatever the call's content, um, I considered them brave, right? To face to yourself requires a courageous mind. And then I started to remember my early days of exploring Zen practice. I was living in Atlanta, Georgia at the time, and I was suffering a lot um, in a way from with a direct experience of loss. Um, some of you know a bit of my story. The move here to California marked address number 19 across 8 states with 12 moves across state lines, spanning the Northeast, the South, the Southwest, the Midwest. I haven't hit the Pacific Northwest yet, but signs are good that it'll happen someday. And and I moved to Atlanta from Phoenix, Arizona, where I did undergraduate studies. And I was there for 4 years. And that's like the longest I've been anywhere. And some of you know that when you move out of the house for the first time, it's a really special time. There's a lot of vulnerability, a lot of excitement. You're on your own, you're free in new ways, and the friendships you can form are really special. And that was certainly the case for me. That was probably the first time in my life that I had friends and I had community outside of the family unit. And then I moved again, right? I went to a new city where I didn't know anybody and didn't know anything. And that was really hard. Um, I had a direct experience with the truth of transiency, this simple statement that everything changes. And so meditation and then Buddhism and Zen is something I got curious about. It seemed like a healthy or wholesome way to meet this suffering that I was experiencing. But for the next 3 years, most of what I did was sit on my couch and read about it. Um, Aristotle, the famous Greek philosopher, observes that we don't become just or temperate or wise by just reading about these character traits, but we become just by doing just acts, temperate by doing temperate acts. In short, we cultivate these qualities of character by practicing them. Where have we heard that before? Um, so when I moved to Santa Barbara, California, after Atlanta, I found a place in a community to support regular meditation practice and study of these Buddhist teachings that I had just been reading about up until then. So on a quiet street one Sunday morning, um, I showed up to a house that I'd never been before. And I walked up to the door, and on the front of it, there was a wooden sign that said, Zazen, come inside. I didn't ring the doorbell. I didn't knock. I just opened the door again into this house that I'd never been before, that I found on a kind of minimal or not well put together website for the Santa Barbara Zen group. And I went into a dim hallway. There was smoke from incense floating in front of me and above me, and there was a small red orange dot at the end of the hallway, no doubt from the top of an incense stick. And off to my left, there was a doorway which looked into a kitchen, and just past it, a humble zendo. And there sat, I would learn, a man named Tony Johansson, one of Shunryu Suzuki's students in the 1960s and 70s. And he waved me in to come sit, and the rest is history. So, what encouraged me then, about 15 years ago, is I assume the same thing that encouraged those 25 people last Saturday to come to this place, the same thing that has encouraged all of you, all of us, to show up here on this Saturday, whether it's your first time or 50th time or some greater number. And we call it bodhicitta, sometimes translated as awakened heart, sometimes translated as the drive to seek enlightenment. In some teachings, it arises when meeting with suffering, you look for a healthy way to transform that suffering, to move with and through that suffering to somewhere else. Kobun Chino would describe it as a fire which once lit, you can't stop. And he continued, this is from a collection of his talks and called Embracing Mind, that when bodhicitta arises, when the heart awakens or breaks open in this way, when this fire is lit, your surroundings and the immediate people around you are affected by how you live your life. Your position in the world, your orientation towards all things, and how you want to show up in your relationships changes. And people notice that. And so he asks, so now what do you do? Um, some people will adopt what he calls a monk's life, a single life. Maybe you move into a temple or you live as a hermit somewhere. Others will live as what Kobun calls an ordinary person, except that they keep this monk's mind within. They keep the fire alive and burning. But your partner is next to you, and your children are next to you, and your dogs or cats are next to you. You still have your job that you go to. And while all of that is happening, the fire is still burning inside. So it is something to do with continuous burning and feeding of this drive to seek enlightenment. And unless you feed it, you can't satisfy yourself. So you show up to places where you will be fed, where you'll be nourished. This way mind includes an almost painful recognition of independence. Not necessarily aloneness, but being born alone, passing on all alone, that kind of realization. You do depend on others, and others depend on you, you know that. But there's an essential independence and essential caring alongside these, coming from an independent person towards another independent person. In this sense, each one of us is absolutely equal. You can say that before the absolute, all are equal, but there are not two, but one person who is you. So bodhicitta, this continuously burning, moving principle, I suggest, um, sometimes sparked through meeting directly loss, impermanence, old age, sickness, death, gives us the courage to show up and sit zazen, to read sutras, and to support one another in this community that we call Sangha. And that courage supports being vulnerable. And when vulnerable, we're well positioned to meet the whole of our life just as it is, including the compliments we receive from others. Um, and all of this together, the courageous, awakened heart in intimate connection with its life, whether present in simple presence or demonstrated through speech and deeds, is, I think, what I call sincerity. Thank you.